Hello everybody, welcome back to 10 Minute Reviews. This is Freya, I'm Jason, and I'm bringing you today's video. She's rather enthusiastic when I first sit down on the couch. So today I want to bring you another book. Actually, I'm going to bring you a series. I'm going to bring you a series that covers a couple different genres. As always, I'm going to talk about four things. I'm going to talk about the world, I'm going to talk about the characters, the plot, and the writing style. So I want to cover the Stitched Worlds series by, I'm pretty sure this is a pseudonym, Macronomicon. So far, I believe there's 4 books. They all start with the word apocalypse, and then they have different system-based titles, like Apocalypse Generic System is the first book. I believe Apocalypse Quest System was the most recent one. And guys, it's a fantastic series. This is actually one of my favorite series that's ongoing right now. Every time the new book comes out, I read it within days, and it's a typical lit RPG book. So so as far as the world goes, the world is our world, and it's not. There's a reason it's called Stitched Worlds. This time, unlike a lot of similar to a lot of the lit RPG books, some of them, the whole system that shows up, or the system apocalypse that shows up and takes over the world, does have, I guess you could say, overlords, game masters, almost in a way, that control this system and control what goes on with it. They're almost god level, and they do end up eventually appearing more like they are tech based, which kind of makes the system possibly some form of like nanomachines or something along those lines. It's tough to say because it doesn't fully explain everything. It just kind of gives you hints here and there. The very first book just deals with humanity. As the system is created, groups of humanity are taken and put into basically their starter quests, their starter towns. Now, when they do it, they have the opportunity to pick their difficulty levels, and the difficulty levels are what will affect the rest of their lives. Basically, it's what will give them the most advantages, the most feats, things along those lines. Now, the main character is Jed Trapper, which is an amusing name since he ends up with a trapsmith type of ability, and he is a military vet that is suffering from severe PTSD. He actually tries to commit suicide at the very, very beginning of the very first book. Then he ends up trapped within the system. Now, because he was looking to, call it quits, when he's given the option, he just chooses the impossible level of the starter town. And naturally, it wouldn't be too much of a series if he didn't beat it. But the way he does ends up being pretty tricky. So a lot of the books they have a plot, but there's also some slice of life, and generally the plot is sort of an ongoing thing stretched out so far through the series. The first book, he just needs to survive the trial, and he ends up getting a class that basically is Mystic Trapsmith. He's basically a telekinetic, but the way he puts it in the book, he's telekinetic Batman. He can create conditions. He's more of a computer programmer almost than Batman. The reason he called it Batman is that he has to create things for every possible scenario, which he spends a lot of his time doing. But mostly he creates abilities and traps and things like that all require triggers, like and of course it's pretty tongue-in-cheek, like pew pew fires a bolt of telekinetic force, basically a bullet out of his finger, and he sets a whole bunch of like 50 of them or something like that. So he's got his pew pew, and he sets some that just use like eye movements, or like 5 blinks in a row or something like that, causes a telekinetic razor to move in front of his wrist, basically, if he ever gets tied up. And he just has so many of these different traps that he ends up coming up with. But as he's trying to navigate through this impossible tutorial, what he basically ends up doing, because he's succeeding, he's doing really, really well until the big bad boss, and he can't, of course, beat it. So I'm going a little bit into the plot here, but mostly from the first book, because it sets the stage. he basically cheats. He manages to make it to the Overlord's game master's command post almost, and that's kind of what it is. It's almost like a computer station, and or like you would expect, like an NSA kind of station or something. Just computer banks and terminals and stuff, and teleporters. Teleporters. That's how they send like your loot chests and stuff like that down there. But they apparently can also control time. So he basically uses it. He creates kind of a time loop and manages to defeat the impossible challenge, which of course gives great benefits to a number of the people that chose the impossible challenge and actually survived. Now in his case, he's basically declared persona non grata and is not only booted out, but he has all his abilities locked. He loses Mystic Trapsmith abilities. He loses all his stat boosts. He lost a leg during this thing. So while everyone else is either some form of cultivator or some form of leveling up type of character, Trapper is, come the second book, he's just a normal human with absolutely no abilities whatsoever. Now he does, of course, figure out a way to start getting his abilities back, and it's a pretty clever way of doing it. Pretty amusing what he has to do. Basically has to take a vow, and it's pretty funny. But he slowly starts getting some of his abilities back, and because of this, he's a fairly famous person. So because of it, he starts entering once again back into the world, and then eventually the galactic stage. Now the book series is absolutely phenomenal. As far as the writing style goes, it's incredibly well written. The litRPG side of it is fantastic. It's fascinating. I seriously check at least once a week for the next book to come out, which is crazy because the fourth one just came out fairly recently. But I'm always checking because I want that next book. He ends up meeting, one of the great rulers that's incredibly powerful. He starts an orphanage. He makes enemies, makes friends out of enemies, makes enemies out of friends. Continues to try and slowly develop his abilities as he starts to get them back. And I mean, I can't rave enough about the Stitch World series. You guys just absolutely have to read it. So after you hit the like and subscribe buttons, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Go check out Stitched Worlds by Macronomicon. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll catch you next time. Bye now.